I think we're live, my friend. Let's see
All
what kind of
right.
magic we can make happen.
All right. It sounds good. So, on this episode, we'll be talking about one of the most notorious bounty hunters in the Star Wars universe. Yep, that's right. We'll be talking about the simple man who tried to make his way in the universe. You probably know him as Jango Fett, and he was described as a famed a famed Mandalorian human male bounty hunter and the clone template of the Grand Army of the Republic. However, we know that there's more to him than sorry, more than him than that, and he is what this episode of Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken are all about. Hey Ken, please do us a favor and play that intro music.
Sure thing. Here we go. Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. This is Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy.
All right, so I'm Todd.
And I'm Ken. And I got to apologize to you publicly. Um, it seems like we haven't been together in quite some time. And I want to apologize for taking that left turn at Albuquerque and bringing us on this wild monarch chase and not being able to get together as often as we had wanted to.
Well, same thing here. I mean, just life kind of got in the way of everything else, and to be honest, I mean, just managing my podcast and starting this podcast and doing D&D with the boys and just everything else in life, it got a little crazy.
Well,
So
it's
it's okay.
2025. We're back together for another fun-filled episode.
Right. And we're going to make this more common, more often.
Yeah, especially considering we're I think we're finally accumulating all of the right gear, whether it's microphones or lights or whatever. I think we're finally in a good place to have all of the parts and pieces where we need them to be. And what we've done historically when we've gotten together is we had a little bit of um, an opening bit, and it was usually talking about either things we've done Star Wars related or things that we've added to our Star Wars collections. And since it's been a while, why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to related to, you know, making that horde even bigger?
So I haven't really bought a lot of stuff Star Wars just cuz you know, things whatever. um but I have been painting my Shatterpoint miniatures. Having a lot of fun with those. I've been trying to post those on social media. And then of course, for the holidays, I actually got the This Is the Way box, which does include the armor, Paz Vizsla, and two of the covert Mandalorians. And then I also got my 3D printer up and running. So I can get things working with that as well.
How big of a printer did you get?
I have an Ender 3 Professional.
Okay.
So it's the smaller bed plate, but it's enough to make weapons and trinkets and stuff like that.
Well, could you print miniatures then?
I could. I actually use it for a lot of scenery,
Okay.
terrain and stuff like that. When it's not a resin printer. Resin printers are a little more fine, and you can really get the detail on for the 3D printers. But so this is an FDM printer, but it works great for terrain.
So like the bunkers and the castles and things like that, or the ramparts or whatever.
Right. I even printed little trees out that came out really nice.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but I mean, it's a 3D printer, so you got to sand, lines and print lines and stuff like that, and prime them up. But it's nice for something natural like the trees and stuff like that because you actually get some texture in there that you don't normally get.
Well, I'm going to guess too. Painting miniatures, you don't have all the rigmarole of CRLs and having to get them approved. You can make your trees look any way that you want, right?
No, there's no rules, no rules at all as far as that goes. So that's one really nice thing. I just print something, I paint it, and it's done.
Nice. So I finished up 2024 pretty remarkably, So since we got together last, I've added a handful of new Black Series figures, including a 6-inch Jar Jar Binks,
Very nice.
a bunch of magazines, some books, a new Black Series Mandalorian helmet, and the head of
Wow.
one of our famous protocol droids. So if we look up above, you can see I've got the little C-3PO head from from Disney.
Very
We end,
nice. Very
we ended
nice.
up doing a little trip to Florida around Thanksgiving, and I came home with a protocol droid's head.
That's fantastic.
And I
That's
think of all of those things, my favorite was this book here. It's by John Celestri. John
okay.
Celestri was one of the animators at Nelvana that helped put Boba Fett on the screen for the Faithful Wookiee, the story of the Faithful Wookiee. And so
Oh,
inside here is
awesome.
like concept art, and it's the animation script, straight from the
That's
artist.
that's really cool.
Yeah, and then he also has another book called Rough, RUFF, Rough Sketch, and
Okay.
it's got some of his other works in there. It's just I love the background stuff. I love the behind the scenes stuff, and to get things directly from the artists, I think is pretty fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I'd be all into that.
And have you done any Star Wars related stuff since we got together?
Uh, so, of course, I finished Skeleton Crew last night.
Okay.
That was fantastic. Um, a lot better. I couldn't get my kids to watch it, and it drives me crazy. But I thought they would be all into it with the pirate theme and the kids and stuff like that. And I just couldn't get them to watch it. But my wife and I watched it. We both enjoyed it. I'm ready for season 2, but I don't know if there's going to be one. But um, I'm all about it. They really did a really great story and wrapped it up perfectly.
Oh yeah, that is for sure. In fact, I feel a little bit spoiled because the first two episodes of the Skeleton Crew, just like the first two episodes of the Acolyte, they put them in limited release in one of the theaters in King of Prussia. So I scooted up there and watched it with Safi Hinton and Mike Hinton from the Inflatable Falcon. And I gotta say, I mean, you know how much I love watching Star Wars, and you also know how much I love watching Star Wars on the big screen. And I really
Oh,
wish we could have seen more episodes on the big screen, but the first two were really, really fantastic, especially with that surround sound that you can only get in a theater. My system in my house is nowhere near what it would be like in the theater.
and there's nothing like watching Star Wars in the movie theater.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a completely different experience.
That is for sure. And I know that they're coming out with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie and stuff like that, but I hope they figure out an additional thing to do. Not because I want to just give them more money, but because I want to be able to go and see it with friends, see it with fans once again on that giant screen, with
Sure,
loud sound like it's meant to be watched.
sure. Yeah, I'm all about it. I'm waiting for the next movie. It can't come fast enough.
And that's what 2026 I think is when Mandalorian Grogu comes out.
I think that's what they're saying. I had heard at one point that they were hopeful for Christmas next year or this year
Okay.
actually, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it'll be May.
Yeah, because I thought they had finished up. I could be wrong with this, or I could be making it up and spreading rumors. So Kathleen Kennedy, please, forgive me. But I thought they had finished like principal photography, and I thought they were, doing all the effects and stuff like that now. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think if we're wrong, I think Kathleen Kennedy should call us and come on the
Yeah,
show and set
yeah.
us straight.
That's probably the best. Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, or somebody
Or
just
even a representative. I mean, she could ask Kristen Baver to come and explain these things to us, or Pablo Hidalgo just set us straight.
right.
Leland Shee give us all the connect the dots or whatever and explain why it's our information is inaccurate.
Absolutely. Come tell us that we're wrong. We'd appreciate it.
And so, other than the terrain that you've been using your 3D printer for, have you been doing anything costume wise?
Um, so I got approved in August, and I think I fell into that I'm approved, so I don't. There's nothing I need to do kind of mindset. Um, so I didn't really do anything with my Mandalorian armor. I have a lot of stuff in mind. I do want to get a rifle printed and painted up, and so I can get get that on with my kit. There's a couple small detail things that I really want to get to, and I just haven't. I kind of stuck in that. I'm done, you know. I don't know what to do because I'm done, you know.
Have you
But
trooped at all?
I didn't troop at all. Not.
Okay.
I did my first troop, and which I think was right before our last episode. Um, and then I didn't troop anything. Like there was just I missed a couple that like either I had to work or there was other plans or stuff like that that I wanted to get to. In fact, I think I've only been to one armor party since then.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't been to any of those things either. I've only and I was looking back on all of 2024, and the only time I suited up formally and officially was for a couple hours at Fan Expo.
Okay.
You know, I didn't do anything else. No armor parties. This weekend, I might go up to Pennsylvania and get together with some of the droid builders. They're putting together. I don't know if they call it an armor party. I think it might just be a build party.
Okay.
Um, so I'm going to get together with them because I want their suggestions on helping to finalize my pit droid, you know, N3RD. Um,
N3RD.
yeah,
Awesome. I did get a chance. I actually went to a Saber Guild meeting.
really.
Yeah, they have them in the next town over from me right now. Because they have an indoor studio they're using, and you know, there was only two other guys there, and the Eric that ran it, he was great, and he walked me through all the steps and everything else, and I realized that 5 o'clock on a Sunday is kind of a hard time to get there.
5
Just with,
a.m.
oh, 5 in the evening.
Oh, 5 in the evening. Okay, I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
that's really early. Sunrise sabers.
yeah, it's just that weird time, like it's right dinner time, early dinner time, late, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so I'm getting stuff going, and on a Sunday it's like, oh, I could go, or I could do this, or I could do this, and I just haven't gotten a chance to get back.
And did it give you like katas that you could do in your garage or something like that?
Yes, so he walked me through all the basic moves, um which again I would probably have to refresh myself, but he did get me in touch with all the online information so that I can keep going with it.
Oh, after the show, you got to send that to me.
Yeah, I'll have to pull it up, but I will definitely get it to you. It's pretty interesting. But they're very much into the nobody can get hurt. You know,
Okay.
it's very choreographed. So like you have to have the saber this way and not this way, and you know when you block, you have to be going this way. And you know,
Okay.
there's actual cues with the lightsaber when you're going to make an attack.
Okay.
It's
Oh, so
it's
you're telegraphing to your part, almost like WWE.
yes, you're telegraphing to your partner exactly what you're going to do, and then there's a specific block for just that move.
Oh, that's very cool. Well,
Yeah,
which is different because I think in France they've actually made lightsaber fighting like an actual sport.
yeah, oh
You
yeah.
know.
I've seen a lot of videos about that. That's I can't even get past that. But I of course I can't get past the basics of choreographed training. So we'll see. I don't think there's lightsaber fighting in my near future.
Well, at the very least, you got the beginnings of it, which is pretty cool. And it's to me, it's just a fantastic example. So you've got these folks who way back in the 70s got
Hmm.
together and made this wacky movie, you know,
Yeah.
with a space dog and a dude in a suit with breathing problems. And here we are, this many years later, and adults are gathering to learn some of the stuff. Or adults are gathering to build stuff, or adults are gathering to to make kids smile just because they're dressed up in a certain costume.
Oh yeah, I think it's why I do it, you know. It's why
And it
we
doesn't
do
seem
it.
like there's any end to it. I mean, John Favreau said at I think it was Celebration Europe that Star Wars is forever. You
Yeah.
know, it's definitely going to outlast me. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, that's for
Um,
sure.
and it's exciting that there just continues to be more stuff. And I didn't talk about it much other than saying I saw it in the theater. I loved the Skeleton Crew. I thought it was absolutely fantastic from a fun perspective, from a costume perspective. Now we've got pirates that we can dress up as. We
Right?
could you could walk into a Comic-Con now dressed as a wolf man with 4 blasters, and it's Star Wars. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so it's
Oh
it's
yeah.
pretty dang cool.
No, I agree. And I'll tell you what, Jod's helmet, the helmet that he was when he got Crimson Jack, when he
Yeah,
got that helmet, oh, I was all about that.
that was a fantastic helmet. It reminded me a little bit of Zori Bliss's helmet, the way that it was all enclosed like that.
Yeah.
Um, and a little bit, I want to say like one of the Praetorian guards too, just because of the shape of the front visor. Maybe think of one of those Praetorian guards from The Last Jedi.
Yeah, it had that old Republic vibe to it.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was too. That's for
So
sure.
I don't know if you ever played the Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic. The Warriors had that almost T visor front with the shaped helmets,
Yeah.
and I was always a big fan of those, but to actually see one on a person, I was like, wow, that's where do I get one? How do I sign
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, exactly. How many pieces do I have to cut it up into so I can print it on your printer?
Right, right,
It's speaking of the T visor, that fits perfectly into tonight's episode. I mean, you had proposed that we got together to talk about this Mandalorian or faux Mandalorian or controversially Mandalorian, this guy named Jango Fett. And what it is about this character that made you want to do an entire episode about him?
well, I mean, Jango Fett's probably the most represented minor character in all of Star Wars. I mean, he obviously we learned from Attack of the Clones. He would there were comic books, toys. He was the main character of his own video game. And if anybody doesn't remember that, you go buy it. It's on consoles. They just remastered it. Get it, play it. It was probably I don't even know how many times I played that game when it first came out. Um, to be honest, he's like more like an anti-hero than a villain in most of his stories.
Yeah, and one of the funny things about it is, you know, his legacy continues because we know that he was the source of all of the clones. So whether you're talking about the entire cartoon series of the Clone Wars or even the more recent one, the Bad Batch,
Right,
Django was the foundation, the genetic foundation of all of that. So those characters, even though they don't look like Django Fett or they don't look like Tamora Morrison, they're they're linked to Django genetically.
right. And I mean they did in all the shows, they definitely pulled the right facial features to kind of put them back to Tamara Morrison.
Yeah, you
I
can see, yeah, almost like when you have a kid and their parents next to each other, you can the eyes and the nose and like that kind of stuff.
right,
Yeah,
right.
and
And
that just
there's
goes to show how great the animators were. They put that kind of attention into it.
oh, absolutely. I mean, from season 1 of Clone Wars all the way up to, like you said, the Bad Batch, which was what last year when it ended.
Yep.
I mean, all those characters, you can kind of put them side by side and they're not exactly the same. And even though the animation has changed a big deal, that you can still compare, like Hunter to Cody, you know?
Yep. And then you got the magic of D. Bradley Baker's voice for I don't know how many hundreds of clones he did.
Oh, yeah. God bless him.
Yeah.
They kept
And
him busy for a long time.
you betcha. I mean, he had from what I remember hearing is there would sometimes be scenes where it would just be him in the booth talking to himself, talking to himself, talking to himself, because every character that was on on the screen at that time was voiced by him.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah, it's crazy.
and so I wonder if so Django Fett got paid one big lump sum to create all these clones. I wonder if that's how it worked with D. Bradley Baker, if they paid him per character.
I don't know, but he probably got a pretty good he probably got a little sore on the whole contract because he played a lot of characters.
Yes, yes. Even the non-clone characters like Zeb and stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah, so
No.
walk us through a little of this guy's history.
All right. So, and of course, just like everything that we do, we use BBY or ABY as a time frame. And so Jango was born in 66 BBY, which was before the Battle of Yavin. He was originally a farmer's son. He grew up as one of the peaceful, true Mandalorians on the world of Concordia Dawn. If you've watched the Clone Wars, Concordia Dawn is, at least later depicted, it's that planet that's broken apart. So he lived there peacefully with his parents, but at the age of 6, mercenaries came in and killed his family. He ended up being rescued after he physically beat down some of the mercenaries by Jaster Muriel. So Jaster Muriel took him and adopted him, just like the foundlings did with Din Djarin, and different Mandalorians, though, just to be clear. So they took him, and from that time till about 44 BBY, Jaster Muriel he was the leader of the true Mandalorians. And they fought against the more savage Death Watch, who were led by Tor Vizsla at the time. So Jaster wanted the Mandalorians only to fight with honor and respect. Death Watch, they wanted to go back to the days of crusading and conquering. If you remember from our last episode, Death Watch were kind of following in their footsteps.
Because that was how they proved themselves, right? That their whole way of being was to conquer as many other people as they could, to almost like I think the phrase used was conquest. Let's get that planet and the next planet and the next planet.
Absolutely, they were they were literally the idea of crusaders. They just went from place to place and picked up new recruits everywhere they went, and just kind of tried to, almost like the Mongols of our history, they just spread around and took over everything.
Or Vikings almost.
Okay, or Vikings. Yeah. Vikings would be the same way.
Yeah, space Vikings, just without the horns.
Right. Well, some of their helmets had horns, but
oh yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah, good point. Especially if you look at the early ones where they used bones and horns as part of their armor. Yeah, good point.
Correct. Yeah. So of course they obviously went back and forth. The true Mandalorians really just wanted to be at peace. They wanted to find their a new way of life in the galaxy. The Death Watch, they always warred with. They were trying to conquest. They wanted to. They fought. All their thing was honor through combat. That kind of idea. Eventually, Jaster Muriel was betrayed, and he fell on a planet called Corta 6. Jango actually succeeded him as the Mandalore, or the leader of the true Mandalorians, for the rest of the days of that war. The true Mandalorians were eventually defeated at the Battle of Galadran, where the Death Watch, they actually conned the Jedi, who were led by somebody that you might know, Count Dooku, to help defeat the true Mandalorians. This was an interesting thing because Jango, with no weapons, actually defeated 6 Jedi on his own.
Wait a minute. So I want to make sure I get this right. So this partnership with Dooku was when he was still a Jedi.
Yes, so he was still a Jedi.
So the Death Watch worked with Dooku.
Yes. They basically conned the Jedi and said, "Hey, these guys are Mandalorians, and they're starting a lot of trouble." Essentially, so they sent Jedi in to clear out the trouble, shall we say?
Yeah.
Now, when that happened, a lot of Mandalorians died. A lot of the true Mandalorians died, but Jango Fett actually beat in single combat or multiple combat, I guess, 6 of the Jedi that were there by himself.
And this is using Durasteel armor. He wasn't even equipped with Beskar armor.
Right, he didn't have Beskar armor at the time. So, of course, Dooku was incredibly impressed by this young man, who he was in his 20s about this time. So he ended up getting away. So after, Jango Fett defeated 6 Jedi on his own. Dooku obviously was not involved with the fight, so they didn't actually meet face to face at this point. After the battle, the new Mandalorians disavowed any knowledge or affiliation of Jango Fett. So at that point, Jango decided, hey, I'm going to go become a bounty hunter, and because I need to work for a living, I need to do things. I have no family anymore. Even my new family were mostly killed off. Now,
or disowned me.
Yeah, or the other Mandalorians disowned him. They're like, oh, he's not a Mandalorian. He's just some kid, And so he went into bounty hunting, which, of course, is opening to the greatest bounty hunter in existence, right? So he, of course, worked with a number of different bounty hunters. Some of them you may have heard of, like Aura Singh and Bosk, and he actually made a name for himself. He was one of the biggest bounty hunters in the galaxy at that time. And of course, during a job on Uvo 4, which is a prison moon, he actually liberated a fire spray attack craft. And sure, everybody knows what this is. The Slave
One. We can say the name here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the Slave One became his main transportation for the rest of his career.
And when you say liberated, you essentially mean he took it. Like,
yeah, he used it to escape.
Yeah, so he managed to get in, hot wire or whatever, and zip off. And now, he did what the kids in Skeleton Crew did. He claims he's
right. He absolutely he jumped in that thing, took off with it, and it was never seen on OVO 6 again, or OVO 4, excuse me, again. Now, of course, the cool thing is it was actually a very uncommon ship. They used it only for prison guards at that time. So it never came. That's why it's such a unique ship, is because there's a lot of them that there wasn't that many of them to begin with. And then when he took one, there, of course, was one less on that planet or on that
And he
moon.
did the Han Solo thing, too. Like, he souped the thing up.
Oh, yeah. He did all kinds of custom modifications, including that wonderful seismic charge that is not a normal setting for that vehicle.
One of the greatest sounds in Star Wars history.
Oh, I know, right? The turbo lasers were actually the only specific weapon on those, and they were set for a regular single fire or stun. But of course, he upgraded them to be those rapid fire turbo lasers that were on it when Boba Fett had it, in Attack of the Clones, stuff like that.
Well, we also got to see him, firing at Obi-Wan Kenobi going through the asteroids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. those beautiful turbo lasers were not that powerful of a weapon when he first got the vehicle. So, but so basically, he made a career bounty hunting at that point for a long time, and then soon after the invasion of Naboo, right around 32 BBY, Jango was recruited to a competition. This competition had a reward of 20 million credits. And if you really want to, if you want to know the exact specifics of what it was, I would say play the game. This is my PlayStation 2 one, the original one I got. It's got many hours of play. But basically, he went through the competition. When he finally got to the end, they told him what his job was going to be, and he was going to be the template for the clones, and he was going to get 20 million credits. Of course, he altered the deal. He wanted an unaltered clone to be his own prodigy, or some may say his son, but I think he was really looking for somebody to train to be even better than he was, or to be another Mandalorian.
It's pretty interesting when you think of Jango Fett and how he, with this deal, got a lot of cash. He got this swanky apartment on this ocean planet,
right?
And he wanted a kid.
Yeah.
When you think about the maker, when you think about George Lucas, he ended up adopting 4 children. So this idea of this desire to be a father, this desire to teach, the young ones, the ones that are close, like a family, because he, like you said a little bit ago, Jango had no family. His parents were killed. The adopted family that he had either disowned him or were also killed.
Right.
And it didn't seem like he was going to be settling down with anyone, even though he did spend a bunch of time with Zam Wessel.
Correct.
This was the best, closest thing. Make me a baby, make me a mini me.
Right. Make a family for me. That's exactly what it was. And basically, from then, I mean, he still did bounty hunting, but not as often. Until the Battle of Geonosis, he lived in Camino. He worked with the clones, not so much directly, but he did bring the people that trained all the clones in from Mandalorian culture. So when all the clones were being trained from youngling to, super soldier, they were trained in a lot of the Mandalorian ways.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he didn't have the greatest of endings.
No. Obviously, if you remember in episode 2, he had a jetpack malfunction that ended up, he really lost his head over.
Yeah. Yeah, at the hands of a Jedi master, no less.
Right. And that technique that he used, that you would see in episode 2, in Attack of the Clones, that battle technique is exactly how he beat a lot of his Jedi adversaries. He would get far away, shoot with his pistols, and then as soon as the Jedi would close on him, he would use his jetpack, fly away, get some distance, and start shooting again. And he took down a lot of Jedi that way, not just the 6 that he defeated in single combat, but quite a few others. And that when not the Rhinoc, the other one, the Reek, when the Reek hit him and broke his jetpack, that's what did him in, because he couldn't follow through with his jetpack, get away, and continue to shoot.
Well, you know what some Mandos call the jetpack, don't you?
What's that?
Portable high ground.
Yeah, right. Right. Portable high ground. That works.
I mean, that's how you beat most Jedi. You just got to get the high ground.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's one thing that I kind of want to add to my kit one day, but I don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, because one of my goals for 2025 is to get a custom post-imperial costume done. I
Right.
also wanted to get a season one Din Djarin, but the custom one might be a little bit easier because there's more freedom in the custom kits. You know,
Right.
you don't necessarily have to make it as screen accurate or what have you. But it is interesting going back to Django real quick. So he um, was beheaded by a Jedi Master in front of his son or in front of his clone, his the Boba Fett, and
Right.
that single action led Boba Fett down this path. And I know this isn't a Boba Fett episode, but I think it's worthy of at least planting the seeds for a future episode about Boba Fett's trajectory, because Boba Fett ended up becoming a bounty hunter and sought out revenge on Mace Windu for that act on Geonosis.
Yeah, very specifically, he wanted Mace Windu to go away.
Yeah, in big ways. I mean, there was
Yeah.
there was one time where he was close to succeeding. He hit a bomb in a Mandalorian helmet. But yeah, we'll save the Boba Fett for another episode. But it is interesting to see the trajectory of Jango Fett and how it was similar to that of Boba Fett.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He kind of picked up right where Django let off. That was the interesting part, and he lived that same kind of style, that same lifestyle, because his parents were murdered, and then he had to find his own way in the world.
Yep, even working with some of the same people. I mean, you could go so far as to say Bosk and Aura Singh and Castor for a little bit were like step parents to him. They worked with him from when he was a kid
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
raise him as a bounty hunter and to teach him about, you know, taking out folks and gathering as much money as you can for doing these odd jobs across the galaxy.
Yeah. And actually, Cad Bane was one of both Django and Boba Fett's mentors.
Yeah, and Cad Bane was a pretty ruthless bounty hunter in his own right.
Yes, he was.
And I
And
think even though he's not a Mandalorian, I think he would be a great subject for an episode as well, in addition to doing one on at least one on Boba Fett.
oh, absolutely. I mean, Cad Bane just kind of shows up everywhere, especially in the newer media. Like, he's just everywhere. I mean, we
And
even got to see him in live action in the Book of Boba Fett. So,
yeah, and tell me he didn't look super creepy.
oh, he looked amazing.
Those triangular jagged teeth and the red Duros eyes and stuff like that. Man, the
Yeah.
neck breather apparatus.
If I could get my face in a Cad Bane mask, I would certainly try to do one of those as a costume. But I
Oh
don't know
man.
that I could wear that.
Yeah, it's a wild costume for sure. It's
Yeah.
and speaking of wild, I mean, we should spend a little bit of time, talking about one of the most important parts of Django, and that's his suit of armor. I mean, from my perspective, one of the things that makes Django, the famous bounty hunter, is that set of armor. And we talked a little bit that it's not made out of Beskar. It was made out
No.
of Durasteel. So there is a little bit of controversy whether or not Django is considered a Mandalorian. And I'm not going to say which side of that fence I'm on. I just think he's an awesome character. And so with that in mind, let's spend a little bit of time talking about that costume. The
Okay.
history behind it is Django's costume was really modeled after Boba Fett's costume. The
Right.
one that we saw in the story of the Faithful Wookiee, the one that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, um,
Right.
and on those little action figures that we love so much, those 3 3/4 inch action figures from the 70s and 80s.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and early on, it was Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston that did the work on them. And for for Jango Fett, it was Trisha Bigger. She was the costume designer for a lot of the 3 prequel movies, and so she designed the costume for Jango in Attack of the Clones. And there were several versions of that costume made for Tamura Morrison and his stunt double, Steve McLean, or sorry,
Right.
not Steve McLean, Scott McLean.
Scott McLean. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott McLean. And they even made one that they could put a wetsuit under, because if you remember in Attack of the Clones, Jango and Obi-Wan had that fight on Kamino when it was like heavy downpouring rain, and so they made a
Right.
set of that armor that they could do their grappling and diving and all the stunt work with, and have a wetsuit underneath so that they could stay as comfortable as possible while shooting those scenes.
Right. And
Um,
probably warm too.
yeah, exactly. Because I can't even imagine what it's like being just literally and figuratively underwater for as long as they were doing all the scenes that they did.
Yeah.
And since that movie came out, there's been bunches of people that have been trying to recreate this, and there are at least two costume clubs where you can get an official version of the costume. And one of them is the Mando Mercs, the group that you and I are participants in.
Right.
And oddly enough, you can actually get an approved Jango Fett costume in the 501st. So normally when you think of the 501st, you think of the stormtroopers, you think of Darth Vader or the Emperor, but they do have this entire, I'm not sure if it's called a regimen or what it is, but a subset of their characters called bounty hunters or denizens of the galaxy, other bad
Right.
guys, for lack of better words.
Right.
And you can get an approved costume in those areas. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the specifics. And I want to see if I do this right. Give
Okay.
me a moment. I want to show a couple pictures. So bear with me while I attempt to share a screen here.
All right.
Let's see what happens. So we got some of the pictures from the comic books.
Very
Now,
nice.
then if we look at the helmet's pretty specific. I mean, it has that magical T-visor that we're used to seeing.
Of course.
And some of the requirements for this, I don't know if you noticed this, but there are actually two colors on what are called the mandibles. And I don't know, I think this part here might be the upper cheek. But so there's a dark blue and a lighter blue.
Right.
And
Right.
there are also these not quarter, 1/8 inch stripes that go all the way around the helmet, around the front and the back. So the requirements are so specific that they say that each of these stripes is 1/8 of an inch thick, or 1/8 of an inch wide. And then
Wow.
on the front, there are the two turn signals.
Right.
And on the back, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keyhole slots that have to be clean cut through with either a screen or mesh behind them, so you can't see through them, but you at least know that the keyhole slots are there.
Hmm.
And there are two versions of this helmet that are available for approval. This one here is crisp and clean, and there's another one where there's a dent here, the left temple, or not left temple, but the left forehead, because when he was getting into his ship, when he's getting into Slave One on Attack of the Clones, you see him bump his head, just like the stormtroopers did back in the 1978 original Star Wars movie.
Really? I didn't actually realize that
Yeah, and
there
they
was a dent there.
Yeah, well, it's not seen in all of the scenes, um, and in the CRLs for the costume, they call out that you can have one version of the helmet with a dent or one version without a dent.
Interesting.
And then when we actually look at the costume itself, you'll notice that the armor is that shiny metallic, not Beskar, not like Din Djarin,
No.
but it is metallic silver, and very much like Boba Fett, there are two chest plates, that
Right.
center iron heart, a collar plate, two shoulder bells, and then an ab plate. So that's your upper armor on the front. On the back, there's a back plate. So under this backpack, there's a back plate that's there. And there are two versions of the jetpack. This jetpack that we're looking here, that's the one that was in the arena. That was the one that was damaged by the reek, that rhinoceros-looking creature.
Right.
The other version of the backpack is this one here, and you can see that it has the missile on top,
Okay.
and slightly different frame and slightly different booster rockets than the arena backpack that's here.
Yeah.
His soft parts, he's got a long sleeve shirt and a short sleeve shirt over the top of it, and they're a light gray material. Or no,
Okay.
sorry,
Uh,
they're more like a purple gray.
yeah, I was just gonna I was just gonna say they're like a purplish color.
Yeah, they're like a purplish gray. The flak vest, the piece of material or pieces of material that the armor, the chest armor and the collar armor and ab plate armor attached to, that's a grayish leather. And then they have two gauntlets. The left gauntlet here has a rocket on it and a flamethrower, and it also has several. It's not easy to see in this picture. I apologize. I wonder if I can make it bigger. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on this picture. Is it growing bigger on your screen? Can you see a
It
little bit
is.
better?
It is
Okay.
definitely getting bigger.
Okay. So at the ends of the gauntlets, there are actually tubes, so hoses that go from the gauntlets up under the the flight suit to make it look like they're attached to his jetpack.
Okay. Oh, so he uses rocket fuel for his flamethrower.
Yep.
Nice.
And so there are two hoses on one and three hoses on the other. And you'll notice these little squares on the inside of the gauntlets. Those indentations are also a requirement of the costume. And there are 7 leather pouches, ammo pouches that rest on top of a girth belt. So there are many layers to this
Yeah.
costume. And that girth belt is also attached to two holsters that hold Westar 34s. Those were the blasters that you were talking about just a little bit ago. You know,
Right.
he'd use the portable high ground and then shoot his enemies from a distance. And he's got a cod piece, um, thigh plates,
Thigh place.
knees, and on the knees, the outside of the knees have two darts, and he has
Okay.
shin plates, boot plates, and then specific boots that are used for his costume.
Right.
You know,
There's
so there's
very
a
specific boots. I remember that.
yeah. Even going so far as saying, I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit more on this. Whoops, that didn't work. Um, there's this arch from the heel to the front part of the boot. Those
Okay.
are also in the requirements.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things I found interesting when I was doing the research for these costumes, one of the differences between the Mandalorian mercs and the 501st, we know that this bounty hunter was pretty powerful, was very good at his job. Well, in the Mando mercs, he has to have the blasters as part of his costume. In the 501st, the
Right.
blasters are considered optional.
Oh, really?
So you don't need to have the blasters to be approved in the 501st.
Oh, but why wouldn't you have two
Yeah,
Western?
exactly. Who doesn't want to have two Westars?
Right.
You know,
I
so
got
it's
dummy ones when I was starting because I thought I was going to make them up. They were
the,
more of a pain than they were worth, but
the rubies versions, the really lightweight ones.
yeah, yeah. I just couldn't make them work. I was intending to hand them down to the kids, but they haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, it's amazing how much detail is in that one single costume. You know, they also have a couple other costumes that are approvable. So in one of the comic books, um, Jango Fett had a different set of armor. I think it might have been one that he wore when he was with Jaster Muriel. He didn't always wear that shiny metallic, the shiny silver metallic armor. He had
Right.
another set, and they even have an approvable version of Jango Fett, or sorry, not Jango Fett, but Boba Fett and the clones when they were young. Remember in the training facility, how they had the headset and they wore like
Right.
the little jumpsuit or whatever. That's also an
Correct.
approvable costume.
That's pretty easy to make. I could do
Yeah.
that.
And I haven't seen anybody do Django's like casual outfit, the outfit that he wore on Camino when he met Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone made it and just walked around a convention, just trying to look like Tamura Morrison.
That, yeah. I mean, if you got the face for it, right?
Yeah, that's why I always do the helmet costumes. It's a lot easier to look like the character without having to see my face.
Right. Make a lot better Mandalorian when nobody knows what's behind the mask.
Yep, and I can play the game that a Mando doesn't take off his helmet, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning at the very beginning of this that this character, this single character, has been in comic books and video games and Lego versions and toys and stuff like that. But what
Yeah,
do you think is
absolutely.
your favorite version or your favorite appearance of Jango Fett?
I mean, to be honest with you, I love him in the movie, but the Bounty Hunter video game just kind of I've never spent so much time with a Mandalorian other than that.
Well, and the cool thing is you get to play as him.
Yes, you
You
play
know,
as him, right?
yeah.
So
So it's not like you just see him in the distance or you're working beside him, but you're actually Jango Fett.
yeah, oh yeah, you have the West Stars. I don't think at the beginning of the game, I'd have to go back and play it, but I don't think in the very beginning that you have the West Stars. But it's not too long into the game that you get both your guns.
Yeah, and I don't remember if they're discovered or if you earn them, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, and
I want.
interesting enough, speaking of the video game, that video game, the Bounty Hunter video game, that was created by John Knowles, JohnKnoles, Knowles, not KNOLLS Knowles, the guy who wrote the treatment for Rogue One. It's a different John Knowles, but
Okay,
that John Knowles also worked on Super Star Wars and the 1996 Star Wars Shadows of the Empire.
that was a good game too.
You know,
It's a
that was
little
one.
dated now, but it was
Ooh,
a lot of
very
fun
dated.
then.
Yeah, you could actually see nods of that, I think, in those pirates that we saw in Skeleton Crew.
Oh, absolutely.
The holsters and the different layers of clothing and stuff that the pirates wore and everything like that. And Shadows of the Empire was, I think, the big, back in the 80s and 90s, that first big push where Star Wars looked to have this multi-prong approach. So they had novels, they had a soundtrack, they had a video game, they had comic books, and they had toys all around a property that wasn't in the movies.
Right. It was
Similar to
this.
what they tried to do with the new, or sorry, the High Republic. The only difference is I haven't seen a High Republic video game or the High Republic toys so much, with the exception of the ones that came out for Acolyte.
Now there were High Republic notes in the last Jedi Survivor. There was
That's right.
there
Okay,
was a
yeah.
lot of High Republic stuff mentioned in there. The droid, um, a couple of the Jedi Temple that you saw, and of course the one of the main villains in the game was from the High Republic, a High Republic Jedi.
Oh, that's right. That's the guy with one arm, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
or part of an arm.
Um, yeah, essentially one arm. I think he
Yeah,
was cut off like midway. So he had a shoulder, but not really an arm.
yeah. And for me, one of my favorite appearances was actually a fan comic. It was put out by a person named N.D. Stevenson, and the
Okay.
name of the comic was "This Place Was Home," and it was just a handwritten, multi-paneled comic where Zam Wessel and Jango Fett are taking care of young Boba Fett, and
Okay.
the language that's used in the comic book is a little bit spicy. In fact, they use the
Really?
queen. Yeah, they use the queen mother of all swear words, all dirty words, and so Zam Wessel taught Boba Fett how to swear, and it was how to swear in basic. So it wasn't
Wow.
like Criff or anything like that. It was the full on Earth swear words.
Wow. I don't think I've seen that. I'd definitely be interested in finding that.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. I won't put the link in the comments or anything here because I don't know who's watching it or whatever. But I'll make sure that
Yeah.
you get it. I think it's pretty funny. And once again, this is a fan put this together. This wasn't a Lucasfilm person. This was just someone who watches the movies, who reads the books, and really likes his character and made up their own story.
That's pretty exciting, though. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I'm very interested in that.
So as we get ready to wrap up this episode of bounty hunting across the galaxy with Todd and Ken, what do you want to say to our listeners? Tell us, tell them where they can find you when you're not on this show.
So when you're not here, I'm either on Twitch or on podcasting for Warhammer stories. I've actually been doing a lot of Twitch as far as painting online and just talking lore and stuff like that. And of course, my podcast is every other week, Table Ready podcasts. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're now on YouTube. So we're getting around. And then every week, I play D&D with my boys for Lake Clan Legends. And we're going to be recording. We're working a schedule. We're going to be streaming every Sunday morning at about 10:30. And of course, on Thursdays, it goes up on YouTube. So yeah, there's a little in between time.
That's awesome. And when I'm not here, Wednesday night, you can find me on the Inflatable Falcon with Mike Hinton and John Scalise when he's, not gallivanting across the universe. And I have my own little show called the Rambling Star Wars Fan. And I just recently put out an episode reviewing 2024 and doing a quick preview about some of the stuff in Star Wars that's coming out in 2025. So I want to, thank you once again for being so patient with me as we, worked behind the scenes to get this episode out for everybody. And I do look forward to recording many more episodes with you this year.
Absolutely. And we're going to be moving this forward. So we're going to, for us, we're going to be on YouTube. We're still going to put it on the podcast. Anywhere else?
Yeah, those we'll still keep our Facebook presence going and work to get Instagram and all that. So I think 2025 is going to be that year that things start to expand, and I don't mean just my waistband. We're gonna work on expanding.
We're gonna try against the waistband.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be less of a man in 2025 than I was going into this year. So with that in mind, I want to thank all the listeners again for hanging out with us for a little bit, talking about Jango Fett. And as the Mandalorians like to say, this is the way.
This is the way. Thank you, Ken.
You're very welcome.